This show is dedicated to helping you strengthen your family tree and live financially free. Thank you so much for being here today, everybody. As I've talked about on this show in the past, I am very interested in getting into buy and hold rental real estate. The additional income, the ability to grow a business that my family can be a part of, just gets me all jacked up. To continue to fan the flames of my real estate dreams, I've invited Chad Carson on the show today. Chad is a full-time real estate investor, a world traveler, a father of two, and a dedicated husband. For the last 15 years, Chad has built a real estate portfolio that has allowed his family to comfortably live without the need of full-time W-2 employment. Through the moniker of Coach Carson, Chad now gives priceless advice on how to invest in real estate and retire early. He's been featured in Rockstar Finance, Business Insider, Yahoo Finance, and his new book, aptly titled Retire Early with Real Estate, drops on August 23rd. Welcome to the show, Chad.
Hey, Andy, it's great to be here. I'm a fan of your work.
Oh, thank you so much. And I am a fan of yours. I'm an aspiring real estate investor. I do not have any right now, and I would like to have some. So that's why I've got you on here, and we can also help people learn how to do it as well. So how did you get into real estate?
Yeah, it was sort of a back door, actually. I was a biology major in college, and I was biology and I had a minor in German. So like I kind of joke with people and say the only thing I knew about real estate practically was I could tell you like the species of the plant in the front yard, like the tree, and then I could translate that to German. So that was about it, you know. I was fortunate though, because my father had rental properties growing up. So I guess I did have a little bit of just at least kind of observation of how that worked. And my mother was a dentist. And so I was pretty fortunate that they spoke about their money. Like my mom was a high earner. My dad was the invested money, was an entrepreneur, actually failed at a couple businesses before real estate. And so I got to observe a lot of that, and talk about it at the kitchen table, which was awesome. And so when I graduated from college, I wasn't ready. I was going to apply to med schools. That was kind of my passion, was biology and medicine. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to take a break. I played football in college. I was a little tired. I decided to start picking up real estate a little bit to see if I could flip a couple houses. And I thought, this will be something useful. I can use this on the side when I'm a professional and I have a W-2 income. And I sort of got hooked when I started doing it, and I haven't looked back. I got used to riding around in the car, not having a set schedule, being an entrepreneur, and I just loved it. And so I've continued to do that, and we can talk about how that's evolved over the years. But I started off just trying to put food on the table, flipping houses and doing it that way. And I transitioned eventually to what my current passion is buy and hold real estate that produces income with a lot less day-to-day effort and management of the activities.
So when you were making that decision at 22, 23, what am I going to do? You looked at one path and then you looked at another. Why did you say, I just don't want to try to pursue the biology thing or the German thing? I want to go for real estate. What excited you about that?
It was kind of like the Matrix, he has those two pills, and it was like, all right, you're going to take this pill, you're going to take this pill. And, and I took the entrepreneurial pill, and I think that's really what did it. I had a professor, I was just auditing classes after I got done, and I had a business professor, and he was just amazing. Like he talked about how he rode around in his car and he bought rental properties, and it just sounded so exciting, and it had a lot of flexibility. And I think that's really, from the very beginning for me, it's been about that flexibility, that freedom. All the way, it started off with me, I was having to hustle and make money, but even then I was playing basketball in the middle of the day, pick up basketball, I was going on trips. And so I saw the normal path, while interesting, going to working for somebody else or practicing medicine. It was intellectually interesting, but the lifestyle was very different. And so that's what ultimately pushed me down that path, was just saying, this is so much more flexible and has a lot of potential. And I could also go back and do the other things. But if I did this first, I figured I could, that would be a good first step.
Well, that's great. Well, you've had a lot of success. I gave you that great introduction, but it all starts from somewhere. So you weren't always, this real estate mogul right now. So where did you start out? How did you find the first house? How did you get your start?
Yeah, I started off as a deal finder, and I'm from the southern U.S. People could probably tell from my accent. We call that a bird dog down here. So a bird dog, like for people who, when they went hunting for birds, they would bring this dog that would kind of sniff out the bushes and point to the bird, and then the person hunting would say, "All right, now I know where it is." And so I was kind of that dog who went and sniffed out deals for other people, and the people who had the money. Like I had $1,000 getting out of college. I didn't have a lot of knowledge. But I always find that whatever business you're in, but in real estate in particular, if you take one little slice of the business and you become really good at that slice of it, then and kind of identify what your strengths are and your weaknesses, you can sort of concentrate and become an expert in that little tiny slice. And I did that with the front slice of finding deals. Like I was just good at sniffing out the deals. I didn't know how to close it. I didn't know how to get the money to buy it. I didn't know how to manage rentals. I didn't know how to do any of that. But all I did was like call people and send letters and say, "Hey, would you like to sell your house? Would you like to sell your house? Would you like to sell your house?" And some people said yes. And then I learned I made a couple $1,000 on a few deals like that. And then that helped me learn how to do it. And I got more confidence. And so about a year later, a business partner and I started getting the money to buy the houses ourselves. We remodeled them, we flipped them, and it just sort of grew from there after I figured out that one little slice.
Okay, so this was like almost like your internship in real estate, then doing the bird doggy. That's great.
Exactly. Yes.
So you said you got into flipping, and I understand you've done multiple different types of directions with real estate, flipping, other avenues. Talk about some of those early learnings about deciding that path, because you said, I found this niche of bird dogging, and I was doing well with it. Talk to me about some of those learnings about choosing the right path with real estate, because there's a lot of different paths.
Yeah, real estate's a really big umbrella. So like even calling it like one business is sort of a misnomer because there's so many different niches. And I think that's one of the most important things when you're first getting into real estate is to identify, again, what I was saying earlier, like what are your strengths? What are your interests? What are you good at? And for me, I got into the business. Number one, I just had to make some money. So it was pretty practical saying, all right, what part of the business can I go out and make some money in? And if anybody listening is in that boat where they kind of want to make a career out of it or a side hustle, you can be a realtor. You can actually get your license, which I kind of encourage people to do that now if you're going to make a career out of it. I went a little bit. The path I went on was a little bit more difficult, actually, where I was just jumped right into being an investor and finding only investment properties. But that's a potential thing, too. A bird dog, a wholesaler is another term some people use for something similar to that, or a realtor, a property manager. So there's a lot of businesses within the real estate business. You think of anything that has to do with real estate, there's somebody making money on it, right? All the way down to like the heating and air tech. But then the more normal path, like what I got into eventually after making money, is what I think most people are interested in is the investment side of it. So actually buying a property that's going to grow in value, that's going to grow in equity where you pay the loan down or own it free and clear, that produces income. And that's ultimately where I always wanted to go. Like I had to start making money. But I see that side of real estate as a completely different niche, but it's very interesting, and I think it has a lot of advantages, particularly with early retirement. When you eventually want to be able to do other things, you want to take other projects on, you want to be a parent, you spend more time parenting. Having some kind of recurring income at some point is a really nice place to get.
Cool. So 15 years ago, that would be like 2003, 2004. You started into this. Yep. And I understand through listening to some of your other interviews as well as reading through your blog that you started to amass a large amount of properties at a point. Is that right?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest mistakes I made was borrowing goals from other people. That's something I say a lot is that, I go to seminars, you read a book, and I don't know, maybe it's human nature, it's my own weakness, but I said, okay, well, they're buying and selling 50 houses a year. So I think I'll just build my business like them. And I was good at copying, like, all right, that's how they do it. That's how they find deals. And then my business partner and I went and did it. Well, there's some downsides to that as well, which for us, we bought 50 properties. We started in 2003. By 2007, we had 50 closings in 2007 where we were acquiring 50 properties. And we're doing this full time. So it's a little bit different. But everybody who knows their financial history, 2007, 2008, 2009, that wasn't very smart, on our part. Not that I think it's kind of difficult to predict markets, but if we were really paying attention and also kind of understanding our own goals, we didn't need to get that busy, that big. And we survived. Luckily, I'm still here standing, but it's not without scars, not without some, the things we did kind of financially, which I know you do a lot on your show, is that we actually, just like your personal finances, we had a really big cash reserve going ahead of that. So we flipped a lot of houses, we made money, but we lived super frugally, just like I just got out of college a few years ago. Why change your lifestyle? And so I didn't have a lot of overhead. And so that, and neither did my business partner. And so we stashed away a lot of cash, and we actually used a lot of that cash on vacancies, on underestimating repairs on properties, on buying the property in a wrong location that had bad tenants who just kept on having turnover and turnover. And so it took us a while to work through that, all the way up until 3 or 4 years ago, and even a couple properties we still have today, we're still it's kind of like chewing gum on the bottom of your shoe. Like it kind of, these bad properties kind of stick with you like for a long time. That's one of the negatives of real estate. It's not like you press a button and sell it, take your loss. You've got to, if you make a mistake, it sticks with you. But if you do something really well, that sticks with you too. It's a really interesting game like that, where the illiquidity of real estate, meaning you can't just get rid of it. Mm-hmm. I think it's a really big advantage, actually, but it's also, if you mess up, it can really cost you as well.
Got it. So when you were at that 2007 time frame and you had almost 50 closings, were you pretty highly leveraged at that point? And then if you were, did you work with banks? Did you work with private lenders? How did that work?
Yeah, so we were highly leveraged. I mean, when we first started, it was $1,000 for me. My business partner had a little bit more money, but yeah, we used a lot of leverage. And fortunately, and I don't know if this partly was intuition, partly was just kind of what we had, but we did not go to a lot of banks. When I first started, I was unemployed basically, as banks saw it. I didn't have a job, and my business partner was an entrepreneur. He had a little internet business, which in 2003 people were like, oh my, internet business, what is that? You can't make money on the internet. And so we were both like, whatever you call that. No, people didn't want to touch us in the bank. We got a couple bank loans, but fortunately for us, we had to go outside of the banking system. We used a lot of seller financing, private money. So we had that same professor who I was very interested in college. He had an IRA, a 401k basically, that he put into a self-directed IRA, and he started loaning money to us on deals. So he would loan us money, and he could make 6% interest eventually, where if that money were somewhere else, he was in retirement phase. He would have the ups and downs of the stock market, or he could put it in a CD and make 0.5%, or he could put it with me, who he knew me, trusted me, and he knew real estate, and we would give him a really low loan to value so that if something happened to us, he'd take the property back and still make money on it. So it was a really good where I had individuals who were actually investing in my business and in my properties. And so as we got into 2007, 8, and 9, we did have, negative cash flow. We were able to pay all our bills. We never missed a payment with anybody. But in a worst case scenario, if we had to go to those people and say, hey, this is really getting bad, is there anything we can do? It would be a much easier conversation with my professor, because we'd figure something out. Maybe we'd pay lower interest rate now and give him half the equity or all the equity, or we'd sell him the property back and pay him his money back over time. So I always mention that in real estate, leverage is one of the biggest risks you take. And I have friends who've used no leverage, Dave Ramsey style, and done just fine. So that's one path you can take. And I talk about this in the book as well, how there's, leverage is a personal choice. It's kind of a risk that you choose how much you want to use it. But no matter what, whether you use no leverage or whether you use leverage, it's the thing that will knock you out of the game quickest. Is not managing your financial capital correctly in real estate. And so we learned that. It kind of we learned it along the way, some of it luck, some of it intuition. But I think that's something over time that we're reducing our leverage. We still have leverage, and I'm still kind of figuring out where we want to land. But one of my main things is that eventually, if you do use leverage, it's not a forever thing. It's you use it, it's a tool, you acquire some properties, you make some money, get it paid off, own at least a big chunk of your portfolio free and clear, because it increases cash flow, it reduces risk, it just makes it more relaxing to own your rental properties. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a big believer in that kind of strategy as well.
Well, it sounds like the 50 or so homes was a little bit overwhelming for you, especially during that horrible time of the economy. Where are you now? Like, how many feels right to you? How many rentals feels right to you?
Yeah, so we still have more than I would want long run, but I have my business partner. I have between the two of us, we have about 90 properties, so 90 units.
Mm-hmm.
I say that kind of reluctantly because a lot of the people, you don't need that many to make it work. Like, so if you just split that in half, say, all right, 45 for me, 45 for him, even there, I think we would be happy more at like a 25, 30 kind of number a piece. And so that, long run, I think that's where we're moving. Like we sell off some properties, use that capital slowly to pay off other properties and kind of whittle it down. I sort of look at it like a farmer who has a herd of cattle or something. And, you're trying to optimize your herd. Every year you take, that cow's a little sick. That's going to be Christmas dinner. We're going to go out and kill that cow and eat that one. And so that's what we do with some of our rental properties. We sell those off and eat them for Christmas dinner. So I think 5-10 years from now, that number will be less. It might be 70, somewhere in there between the two of us.
Okay, cool. So you talked a little bit about finding the right number. And so how does somebody do that? How does somebody getting into this for the first time say, well, how many is the right number? Do I need 90? Do I need 2? How do I find the right number for me?
Yeah. So this is something that's important when you start. You don't have to get super exact about it, but the math of rental retirement is super simple. I'm not a math PhD or something. You can basically, you start with whatever your income is, what your income needs in the future. And this might be for people who are listening, like you might say, rental properties is going to be 25% of my retirement income, or, it's not going to be all of it. It's just going to be a part of it. For other people like me, it's going to be 95% of it. And so you can kind of adjust based on that. But let's just say your number is $5,000 a month. That's kind of an easy round number. So $60,000 per year. You can basically work that backwards and say, all right, how many free and clear rental properties would I need such that when I pay all my expenses, like management, taxes, insurance, maintenance, vacancy, capital expenses, when all of that's paid, but I don't have a mortgage payment, how much would each property give me and how many properties would I need? So for example, if you had a property that rented for $1,000 per month, let's just use that number. And let's say 50% of that rent goes away to expenses, which is actually not far off. I've had some properties that are 40% expense ratios. Some properties are 55, 60%. I mean, it depends on the property, but 50% is kind of a quick and dirty number that if you just want to use it fast. And so $500 per month of that property would be available to you. If you didn't have a mortgage, that's how much you'd have left over, right? And so how many properties would you need if you needed $5,000 per month out of those $500 per month properties? 10. That's easy math. I told everybody it'd be easy.
Yes.
So it's possible if you knew that I wanted to have $5,000 a month, 10 years from now, when you are going to retire off your real estate, you would just need to buy 10 properties, get them paid off. There you are. And so I love that simplicity. That's, to me, is one of the biggest benefits of real estate, either as a part of your portfolio or a large part of it, is that math is not complicated. This isn't the 4% rule. This isn't like all these other things that I hear a lot of people in the financial independence community have to kind of stress about, with spreadsheets and all that. It's just basically the entrepreneurship of buying a property, getting it stabilized, getting it rented, and then over time paying it down. And there's some strategies to doing that more effectively. But that's it. I mean, it just takes some grind, it takes savings, it takes, some discipline. But once you do that, you get into a place where you can do sort of what we did. We're living off rental income. I'm not having to flip a house. My wife is a Spanish professor, so she used to work at a university, and she started going part-time when we had kids, and sort of realized that, hey, I don't like having to go in and do all these meetings and all this other stuff. And so she still does a little bit of part-time work when it's fun for her, but both of us can just do the things that we want to do. If it makes money, great. If it doesn't make money, we don't have to, because of that rental income that's coming in consistently.
That's great. For a full-time W-2 employee guy like me, I think about all of the hidden costs that you get covered with your job, the health insurance, the vacation days, whatever, all those things. How do you factor those into the amount of money you need to make to take care of your family?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. Healthcare being, the top of my mind right now. But it's a budgeting thing. It is difficult. I have a lot of friends who work W-2 jobs as well, and I think it's difficult to do the accounting on what you're really what those benefits are, like you're talking about. But one thing we do is we try to track it really closely. I've been doing that for years. I've always been the budget nerd. My wife, is very good to kind of sit down and I'm like, all right, we're going to, after dinner, 10 minutes, we're going to talk about this budget thing. And when we first met, she's awesome with money actually now. And we talk about it a lot. But when we first met, she used to have these stacks of her retirement like statements, she'd get every month and they were unopened. And I was like, Carrie, what's going on? What are these envelopes unopened? She's like, well, if I open them, I'd have to do something with them and I don't know what to do with them. So she just leaves them unopened. So we both come a long way since those conversations, but I think part of it's just awareness. Part of it's tracking. We've used QuickBooks and Mint and some other different tools, but ultimately it's also building in some flexibility and some, as an entrepreneur, I've always had, ups and downs of cash flow where I knew, all right, I need $3,000 a month, for example, to live, as an entrepreneur. 1 month I make zero, or 2 months I make $0, or I might even feed the business some money. Another month I make $30,000 flipping a house. And so I think part of that was just always having to have that discipline of knowing that, next month isn't guaranteed. And so we track it really closely. With health insurance is kind of a wild card. We had a really interesting experience because we moved overseas and we lived in Ecuador for 17 months. And our health insurance, the amount of cost of going to a doctor, and this is a professional doctor, often trained in the US or Argentina, other places with really good medical care. And it would be $50 or $30 for like a visit that would cost us $200 or $300 here. And also, even we get health insurance for $100 a month. And so it was a shocker coming back to the U.S. and all right, we have $1,300 a month for a $13,000 deductible. And so I think my only answer to that is, all right, we're going to have to pay that. Let's just build more cushion in. And so if we thought our expenses were $4,000 a month, we're going to have to build some extra cushion in over time to cover that. But with rental properties, all right, let's go buy another 2 rental properties and that'll cover health insurance. And you hope, this is no guarantee here, but with rental properties traditionally as a hedge for inflation are pretty good. We've raised rents on a lot of our rentals over the last 10 to 15 years. There's not an exact corollary that is going to always keep up, but I like the fact that you own these assets that are going to tend to appreciate over time if you take care of them and if you buy them correctly. And so that's also helps with some of your planning.
I love that. Well, a couple of questions came up from that information. So the marriage dynamic, you started to talk about your relationship with your wife. Has she always been into real estate with you? I mean, ever since the beginning, did she say, okay, I like this guy and he's doing this real estate thing. I don't know, maybe he'll get a job or something. I mean, how did that work out in the beginning?
Yeah, no, she was not into real estate at all. In fact, I remember picking up, it was the first or second date, I don't remember. And this is like my 3rd year in real estate. So we were still like in the hustle mode. We're not doing that. We're doing okay. But, and to that end, like I was always trying to find properties and I actually put signs on the side of my car. This is my Toyota Camry from high school that I got when I was in high school and I'm still driving that car. And I put "We buy houses" with my phone number on the side of this car. And I pull up to pick her up at her apartment. And she didn't say anything. Like I was expecting, like, okay, what's she gonna say? And she just got in the car and didn't say anything. And I asked her, like, later on, probably a week or 2 later, I said, what'd you think the first time you saw that car? And she said, well, I just assumed you were driving the company car. I didn't think you owned it. She assumed I was like working for somebody else, at the time. And so like we started talking about it. And she is my editor extraordinaire for all my blog posts. So she always reads all that. She goes to my classes, and so. She's got a really good intuition for money, and I've appreciated that partnership because as she's learned the specifics of it, I'll run deals by her. We'll discuss it. She's not as interested in the day-to-day stuff. It's just not her thing. She has other interests, foreign languages and things like that. But it's fun to have that partnership and be able to bounce it off each other. And there have been times when I was gung-ho about something. I discussed it with her, and my rule has become that if I can't explain this crazy deal I want to do in real estate and explain it in 60 seconds and my wife kind of absorb it and be okay with it and get it, it's too complicated. It's too kind of crazy of a deal. And that's been a really nice judgment to have. And she's nixed some deals that we just were too crazy or didn't really make sense. And it's been that dynamic continues to go and has been very helpful.
I love talking to my wife about crazy things that I'm interested in because she always brings me, she always centers me a little bit, we'll say.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So you said she's into foreign languages. Is that a part of the reason you guys are doing some global travel right now? I understand. Yeah, you mentioned Ecuador. So 17 months with your family there. So is that something that's really important to both of you?
Yeah, so when we first met, we talked about traveling abroad, and I got to do a little bit of it in college. I studied German, and so I just got the bug. I just got the travel bug. And for both of us, visiting other cultures, meeting new people, specifically learning another language, just that personal growth that comes with learning how other people say things and interact and communicate with people, it's just been a passion, and it's fascinating. And so we did a little bit. We did that before we had kids. We went on many retirements where we backpacked around South America and had fun doing that. And when we had kids, we waited till our younger daughter was 3 to do this latest trip, and our oldest daughter was 5 when we left. And so we just felt like that was a good age. We traveled with them when they were like infants, and then we waited a couple more years to do this big trip. And we just, for us, having them go to a local school, learn a foreign language, in this case Spanish in Ecuador, was just a really neat thing for us. Where they would come back from school. The first couple months were really tough. They were, had 15 words of Spanish before we got there, and we dropped them in the deep end of a local school where they spoke 100% Spanish, and I sometimes questioned our sanity at that point. But they came home, and after 5 or 6 months, both of them had different kind of speeds of learning, but they both absorbed it. After 9 months, they were correcting me. Like I had Spanish before that, and I spoke pretty well. My wife speaks really well, and they would say, "Papa, no se dice eso." They like correct all my vocabulary and pronunciation. I was like, "This is awesome! My kids are like teaching me Spanish, and they knew nothing 9 months ago." So that kind of experience is fun for us. I mean, it's not for everybody, but it's something where we like kind of slow travel now, particularly with family. I mean, we used to backpack and go, one place to another, but for us, it was just go to a city. In this case, it was Cuenca, Ecuador, which is a beautiful colonial city up in the mountains, 8,000 feet up in the Andes Mountains. And it's a smaller city, beautiful old buildings, green mountains all around, pretty good expat community. And so we just lived in an apartment. They went to school every day. We had friends. We met local people, went to the parks. It wasn't like just this go, 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 go kind of travel. It was just a slow, nice, get to know people, get to know the food, pay attention to all the little things of travel. That it's just a different style. And that's really what, going back to the finances, if you can have your finances in order and not have to go to that, plug into that 9-to-5 job, it allows you to do some things a little bit differently. You can kind of reverse it and take your time. To me, I tell people like the ultimate luxury for me and my wife is not having like a big car. I mean, we could technically have some money to go buy some fancy car or a really big house, but having slow time is like the ultimate luxury. It's the luxury as a parent. It's the luxury as a spouse. It's just as a person getting to read, getting to explore. It's something we really, if you think about it, not many of us get to do all the way back to the time we're a kid. After 10, 12, 15 years old, you're in that go, 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 climb, go to college or go to work a job or whatever you got to do. And so a big part of my message to myself and my ambition is to slow my life down to the point where I can enjoy just being a person and figuring out what I want to do with my life. We all get kind of plugged in to certain paths and identities, and it's kind of fun just to reset and just say, what do I want to be now? I'm 38 years old. Let's figure this thing out again. And to do that for my wife too, and to help her figure out what she wants to do with her life and reinvent herself and our kids and whatever else kind of comes about from that.
That's an incredible message for everybody. I really think that's a good point to reset, to slow down, and analyze where you want to be in your life. So I have to ask, you're out there for 17 months in Ecuador. How the heck are you managing 90 properties, my friend?
Yeah, so it's not overnight. It was a process, and is a combination of, number one, people. I have a really good, I have a really good person back home and she started off as a bookkeeper. She grew into the role of sort of an administrator, property manager. And so for 60 of those properties, she's the go-to person. And I still am involved in that. I still underwrite when we have a tenant, she does all the work of getting all the applications and all the information. I make the ultimate decision, but I can do that through technology, computers, everything back in Ecuador. And I can, in Ecuador, I still do that through online bill pay and through technology and really cool software. So combination of a really good people on the ground, that person, also some contractors who make a good part of our team, and then technology allow you to do, I typically spent, some weeks were more, some weeks were less, but about an hour or two per week. Usually on Thursdays, I would do my bill paying and kind of bookkeeping. But the rest of the week, it was I might get a text here and there, just kind of asking a question. But it really, when you get some people and some systems in place, you can be a relatively passive business. And that's fortunately where we got at that point for us.
That's great. That's great. Well, so you talked about the importance of being a father and spending time with your children. Do you see them being a part of this real estate business in the future?
I would love it. It's just starting. Like my older daughter is 7 years old, and my wife and I are really interested in helping them figure out what their gifts are and try, but also giving them the message that, this is what dad does. And it's called a real estate investor. That doesn't mean anything. So I'm trying to explain it in a way like, what do I do? All right, I help people with housing. Like, how we live in this house, and we were down in Ecuador, so we were renting from the person and said, how this is not really our house. We didn't want to buy a house here. And so we are living here, but we pay money to this other person, and she's really nice enough to let us live here, and we take care of it for her. And then we pay her some money every month. So I'm trying to explain that like every job is something we give to somebody else. And the corollary of that at some point is like, all right, what do you have to give? What do you want to contribute? What do you want to do? And, mom's a teacher. She helps people learn languages. You learn how to speak. And so we'll have that conversation. And, I have no clue whether they'll be interested in it. I would hope, they'll have some kind of, you see it as a resource. But I know from my own case, my dad, had rental properties. And he used to, when I was in middle school during the summers, this is in Georgia, heat, 95 degrees, he would buy a property. And sometimes it had been vacant for months because it was a foreclosure. And somebody would leave the refrigerator full of food, and he would drop me off and say, "Hey, okay, Chad, here you are. Clean this refrigerator out. I'll be back in 3 hours, and see you later." And you'd open it up, and it smells, and there's nasty trash everywhere in the house. And I was thinking to myself at that time, like, this is the worst business I can imagine. I will never do this. I'll do something else. But you wisen up when you grow up, and you realize that it can also be some good on the other side of that. So, so I came around, but it wasn't. I think the lesson I got from my parents was they weren't trying to force it down my throat. My mom was in medical profession. She was interested if I wanted to go that way, was always interested in giving advice. My dad was an entrepreneur, investor. When I talked about it, his ears perked up, and he was always enthusiastic to have a discussion with me, but it wasn't like, hey, that's what you got to do. And I plan on doing something similar. My main thing is I would like them to be self-sufficient. Like if my girls are interested in dance now, if they want to be dancers, if they want to do something else that could or may not make money, follow your heart, be creative. That's awesome. I always follow that, but also have 1 or 2 or 3 practical ways on the side. Be a plumber, be a bookkeeper, be a real estate investor, whatever you want to do. You got to mix that passion and that practical side, and that's certainly a message I'll try to keep in their ear over the years.
That's great. Well, you're back from Ecuador now, so where's the next adventure?
Our house is actually rented for another few months, so we're sort of roaming around right now. We're at the beach now with kind of visiting with my wife's family and reconnecting there. We're going to go out to St. Louis where their family lives, and visit there. Then we're just going to go out. We're going to take a road trip out to Colorado for a little bit and kind of hang out, go see Mr. Money Mustache headquarters, kind of some other friends out in Longmont and the other area there. And then we're going to go back to our girl's going to go to school this fall back in South Carolina, Clemson, South Carolina. So we're just going to put our feet back down, move back into our house. We've talked about it. We don't really know. After a year, there's kind of like this screen where I had no clue what it looks like beyond that first year. But we're trying to figure out what that balance. We know we're going to go on the road again. We know we like to travel, but is it 2 or 3 years at home, 1 year of travel? Is it staying at home and traveling during the summers? I don't know. It's kind of I'm going to have to learn from other people to see how they do that. But we've got the bug bad, so we're definitely going to be traveling and doing some other things along the way.
Well, that's a lot of fun. You're making some great memories with your family too. So you've you talked about building this lifestyle that you have and the amount of properties that help you to live the life that you need, whether they're leveraged or not. If you could go back to the beginning, when you just started getting this all started, and say to yourself, give yourself one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be to you as you're getting this all started?
Yes, awesome question. I think I'd give a negative advice and a positive advice. Like the positive, I would say is like what I did do was learning that one slice of the business, and in particular, I learned how to find deals. Real estate's kind of like a funnel. You have to get the property, and there's a lot of other important things to learn, like property management and remodeling. But if you can't figure out how to find the deal, nothing else really works. So like the positive advice is like keep doing that. Like I learned how to find deals and market and find those off the market kind of non-MLS properties, ones that realtors don't have, behind the scenes. That's a super important skill for anybody who's looking to get in real estate. So do that again, Chad. But the other the other advice, I think the negative advice is like to slow down. The 2007 that I talked about, you don't have to be at blazing speed to accomplish your goals. And you don't have to get bigger and have this huge real estate empire. Although I say that people might see 90 properties as a huge real estate empire, but it's all relative. If you're investing on the side and you need 10 properties, that's plenty. You could have 2 properties and that could be plenty. You could have 1. And so I would just say to myself, and this is a message to everybody as well, is like, you can find what's enough. Like listening to me, like don't think you have to buy a bunch of properties if 1 or 2 accomplishes your goals. Comparing yourself to other people is what I did, and I mentioned earlier how I borrowed goals from other people. I think that can be dangerous. I think you should emulate strategies, emulate skills, but not ever borrow their end destination. Like you want to look at the person you're emulating and say like where did they go? What was the ultimate destination of the strategies they used in real estate or business or finance? And if it seems like pretty analogous to where you're trying to go, then yeah, that's a good thing to do. But I hear so many people in the real estate space, teachers particularly, people who write books, who are talking all about this lifestyle and how you can travel and do all that. And I know for a fact they're spending like they're working, spending 1 or 2 weeks a year, maybe doing these frantic vacations, and that's fine. Like if that's your thing to buy 1,000 units and take over the world in the real estate, that's awesome. There's positives to that, but so many of us, myself included, can kind of get caught up in that and think that we have to do things that way. And so my message is slow down. Figure out what you want to do. Figure out what the money's just a tool. The real estate's just a tool. Like, what is it you were trying to accomplish? And for me, like my business partner and I did that exercise in 2007 when we realized we were going too fast. And we actually wrote down like, all right, what are the things that we are actually trying to accomplish with our money? And it was amazing. It was things like play basketball in the middle of the day for 2 hours, pick up basketball and not have to worry about a job. It was traveling for me as I met my wife. It was, and some of these things had a limited amount of money need. I mean, you don't need that much money. You don't need any money to play pickup basketball for 2 hours. And yet that was something that gave me a ton of happiness. And so I think all of us have those things that if we get used to just quantifying it and say, I need $10,000 a month. Why? Why do you need that $10,000 a month? What's it going to pay for? And yes, there are realistic things like, yes, we need healthcare. Yes, we need insurance. But as you really start getting into it, you're never going to erase all of the risk of all of those things happening. You have to balance, like if you want to live your life and enjoy it, you're going to have that balance point between having a nice base of security, which I think rental properties is a great way to do that. But then also just knowing that, I'm in the game. If I'm not right, if I miscalculated, I'll go buy another property. I'll work part-time. So having that flexibility to know that, it's never going to be 100% guaranteed. And yet I can't wait until I die to actually start trying to live my life a little bit. So that's part of the important realization that I've had over the years.
I love that. That's great. Thank you for sharing that message with us. So you got this book coming out August 23rd. What can people expect to learn when they pick up this book, Chad?
Yeah, so this is a strategy book, and it was partly for my own purpose. I said, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've had a fun journey. Like, what did I do that actually I could translate to other people? So this is in part my journey and my business partner's journey and dissecting the strategies I use. I equated the metaphor in this book as a mountain climb. And so we'll start at the bottom of the mountain, and I'll help you look at the top and say, all right, where are you trying to go financially? What's your goal? And then working it backwards from there and saying, all right, here are I use 3 major paths up the mountain using real estate. So one of them is buy and hold rental properties. And so I go into some examples and some details and some really good numbers on how you would use buy and hold rental properties to build wealth. Another one is using something a lot of people probably on this show are familiar with, like a debt snowball. So a lot of people use that with credit cards and student debt. Well, I'll talk about how you do that with rental properties and how you use leverage to start off. And then you, let's say for 2 or 3 years, you buy it with leverage. You use your rental income, you use your savings from your job to accelerate the debt pay down, ultimately end up with a chunk of properties that are free and clear of debt. So that's one whole piece of the book. And I also use, for those who don't use any debt, I also give some examples of how you could just start off just paying cash for properties and do a snowball, the same kind of concept, snowball your cash flow, buy another property. And I love that example because so many people like in the traditional real estate industry are just like shocked. Oh man, you have to use leverage. Leverage is it's like a sin basically not to use real estate for so many people who've been in the business a long time. But it works. It starts a little bit slower if you look out on a graph, but then it really snowballs over time. And that last piece is where it's a very safe, steady way to grow your rental property. So that's a big message of the book is like this. There's no like one size cookie cutter fits all. There are several strategies you can use that if that's your goal, top of the mountain, here are some really good strategies to use. And then, it's not a tactic book. Like there are books on how to analyze every single property to the nth degree. And I write about that on my blog a lot. There's tactics on finding deals, and those are super important. But this is more of like a map of saying, here's how you get from point A to B to C, so that when you're doing those tactics, you're not doing like I did and run off the wrong side of the mountain and chase somebody else's peak of their mountain. Instead, you're finding your mountain, you're keeping your map, keeping your strategy. And I sprinkle that in. I had a lot of fun interviewing 25 other early retirees who use real estate to retire early. And so I got to interview people like Paula Pant, who I think was on your show, Lisa Phillips, some other people who people have never heard of who are just really interesting. And so I sprinkle those strategies with lots of stories and real life examples so people can kind of identify themselves. If you don't identify with my story, hopefully there's somebody else you can see how they did it and what their numbers are and that sort of thing.
Where can people find it, and where's the best place for them to catch up with you as well?
Yeah, so Bigger Pockets is my publisher. That's another awesome real estate website. So trying to remember my URL, Bigger Pockets. biggerpockets.com/retirement book is where we can find it. I'm sure we'll put that in the show notes. And so that the good thing about you can find it on Amazon as well. But if you buy it directly through Bigger Pockets, I did some bonus interviews with several of the people in the book and really dug into some of the kind of details that you might not hear in the book. And so if you buy it through Bigger Pockets, you also get those bonuses and a couple other bonuses that I include with that. So that URL will take you there. And for people who just want to follow me, write every week at coachcarson.com. That's my blog and my kind of labor of love on the internet I'm at the intersection of real estate and financial independence. Those are the two things I write a lot about. Sometimes it's the intersection of those, how to use real estate. Other times it's purely financial independence, travel, how do you use your money to enjoy your life. A lot of the things we talked about today.
Excellent. So the book is called Retire Early with Real Estate, and coachcarson.com. So check it out, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here talking to you, Andy. I've enjoyed it.
Thanks so much, Chad.